Foundation, Chris Aguirre. Good to have you in Nigeria today.
Yeah, good evening, Nigerians.
Now, without much ado, Chris, I would want you to give us, how do you perceive this, proposal to have all the elections in one day?
Yeah, it's part of it. There should be robust conversations, going on towards our elections. In about 2 years' time, there will be another general election, and all the hulu bala of the last ones. Then the amendment of the existing Electoral Act is necessary. Additional legislations, is also important, and so consolidating all the elections in one day, from the presidential to the councillor, right? Local government elections. By what I saw briefly about the act. Then state houses of assembly, governors, rep members, senators. It's doable. We must think further. It's doable. Once we've conceived the idea, we can achieve it. We're human beings. Nigeria is one of the most resourceful human beings, forward-looking. If it's going to increase efficiency during our elections, if it's going to contribute towards attaining credible, free, fair election, why not? What does it take? I am an advocate, a strong advocate of unbundling of INEC. INEC, the way it's currently constituted, all these amendments, I still have my doubt that INEC can deliver.
Before we get to that point, I know we'll definitely get to that point. So let's hear from you, Tanimu. The proposal of having all the elections, even though we've seen quite a lot of challenges we've encountered even though in the past when it was conducted at different days. So what do you think about this proposal?
For me, it's a welcome development, but I don't want us to restrict ourselves to having every aspect of lawmaking and try to encapsulate it in the Constitution. The Constitution ought to be a ground norm, a working document, and the way it is at the moment, we have not even allowed our Constitution to actually work. The Constitution ought to be like the foundation stone. Then laws are now to be made periodically. So what the mistake a lot of people are doing is that all these amendments, no matter how fanciful they may look, we are now trying to now make it to be a constitutional aspect. The amendment is very difficult. Once you have something in the Constitution, it has to go through a very laborious process for it to be amended. We don't need that. INEC has been adequately empowered. The Electoral Act is sufficient, but it needs amendment. Ordinarily, a lot of us have advocated from the onset, after the last general election, the Electoral Act needs to be amended. We've seen the shenanigans that have been associated with electoral amendment. We have not achieved success. Rather, it's just an avenue where billions of naira are being siphoned. Nothing to show for it. The aspect that we all agreed upon, people are not even allowing that to sail through. Then you now have issues where people have disagreements. The whole process, you have state houses of legislators to give input, and we know that they are under the control of the various governors. If a governor is not in tune with it, it will frustrate this whole process. So the attention should rather be on amending our Electoral Act. Before now, you see INEC reeling out guidelines for elections, only for them to turn around and say, well, it's not a law, it's just a mere guide. We should have a situation, if we must even amend the Constitution, the aspects we should be looking at are aspects that are fundamental in nature, that you make it that once INEC makes a guideline, that guideline forms part of the Electoral Act and cannot be waived. So if INEC say they are using beavers, they assured Nigerians that the election will be credible, they've set in machineries and motions that things will be done in a very transparent manner, they cannot go back and now appropriate and reprobate. We should have a system. We should know that the Constitution, in other climes, they don't have written Constitution. But ours, everybody's clamoring. Anything that has to do with any aspect they want it to be, it ought not to be so. There are various reforms that have been advocated and nothing has been done about it. We should not take one aspect. Having said that, I'm for having election in a single date. The capacity is there. It will reduce cost. It will reduce the issue of postponement of election. It will now have a Senate president that will contest in the presidential and will now want to rush back to contest. We will have people who will now have clear-cut perspective as regards what they want and what they want to represent.
Okay, now back to you, Chris. You earlier said it is doable. Yes. Now, with the challenges we've seen in the past, we've seen logistics, we've had problems with logistics, we had even sometimes you say election is inconclusive in these areas. So how feasible do you think this will be?
You see, sometimes when we discuss these things in isolation, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why I was coming from my background as a passionate election observer. And going forward, even with of course, the current Electoral Act must be amended because, they were like forced into it. You know what it took before President Buhari signed it in February 2022. This time around, we don't want them to find themselves in a tight corner where they begin to, some of the amendments that arose from the current Electoral Act was as a result of them. You can imagine where you, as a candidate, you not vote in your own primary election, as we saw. I mean, those things. So, going forward, amending Electoral Act is important. But I don't know. Though I'm a law graduate, I'm not yet a lawyer, having not called to bar. But like he pointed out the important legal issues. I don't know how Constitution came into this. What I thought is amendment of the 2023 Electoral Act. But then if it entails aggregating all the elections in one day, we can achieve it. Like you said, it will save costs. Every other person will be more agitated, all energies gravitating towards that day. Of course, it's like cannot end in one day, but the election continues. So everybody in Nigeria is looking forward to a day or two of election with fanfare, with peace. And so we can achieve it. It's part of the social mobilization towards a certain thing. And of course, not until we get our elections right, the issue about democracy, it becomes in question. Comes under serious scrutiny because election is the ultimate of it. It's a sacred aspect of the democratic process. Once you get elections right, watch it. Most places where election ends peacefully, mostly in these off-cycle elections, governorship elections, see that we've seen cases where nobody went to court because everything was aggregated towards, that. And you will see when you are losing. Amending the Electoral Act, in fact, in our last interactive session with INEC chair on the 4th of February this year, I asked, what is INEC plan towards amendment of the Electoral Act? They said they have proposed 140 amendments. Among that 140 amendments and 8 new legislations that will be embedded into the Electoral Act as they are proposing. So if this is where all of them are coming up, let us not over-politicize it. Let all hands come on deck. Let the National Assembly members do things for the sake of posterity so that we can bequeath a peaceful society. Once the elections ends in, like that, it doesn't, you can imagine for 2 years, thank God that the government is trying to assert itself and move on, and of course there's no strong opposition. Once there are so much acrimony in the election, it affects the leadership that follows. Yes.
Chris. Now, back to you, Tanimu. What are the potential benefits of these, if election is conducted in what are the potential benefit for the voter?
For me, it gives, it increase the participation of electorates. Unlike what you have before, the fatigue. For me personally, I vote in Kaduna. So if the elections are staggered, I will travel down to vote for the presidential election. I'll travel down for the governorship election. But in this time, I know that I have a single date, a whole period of time where I will just need to travel, mobilize, and it's done. Then look at it. If you look at the humongous resources that INEC has spent and the little they show for it as results, we now have a time where they were able to plan. You need to increase more ad hoc staff. You need to commence early registration and updating of the voters register. Everybody will now be on deck that once you miss the opportunity of voting, then it means a lot of discussion will be had where you have how people in the hospitals will be able to vote, how people that have special needs, people in the prisons, all the aspects will be tabled around and it should be discussed. And
because I was actually, sorry to cut you short there, I was actually, thinking, how can it be, possible, talking about the persons living with disability and how to manage all of that?
It's about planning. So you can have a situation where people will vote early. For example, the crescendo should be a particular date, maybe May 29th or February 1st or so. People can start voting even by January. So I should have, now we are going digital. My NIN number is linked with my international passport. Why not synchronize all these means of ID? Make the voters card to now be a single card. We now have our national identity card that will equally serve as our voters card. And if I have voted, even after the election, who I voted, how my voting pattern, they can easily assess it. So it's something that even increase the credibility of the election, because we now be able to fact check. So I don't need to go and stand on the queue and choke the whole process. I can vote early. It's done in other climes. Elderly can even vote by mailing. We have so many means. It's because certain people are benefiting from the flawed system. That is why they want a situation where they continue to have manual intervention, where they believe that it's just about creating the impression that it cannot be done. We don't need the constitution to be amended for this to be achieved. What we need is electoral act to be amended frequently. The moment an election cycle is over, after litigations, you see from the court pronouncement, you know that there are certain lacunas, there are certain areas that needs immediate attention. So such areas should now be included in the
Thank you very much,
Electoral Act.
Tanimu. We'll take a short break now. The conversation will continue after the break. Don't go away.
Implementation of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different? We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that are questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that we are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today.
Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we're looking at the bill, seeking for the general election to be conducted in one day. And of course, I have two gentlemen here with me in the studio. Now, back to you, Chris. We're talking about, having a free, fair election, and of course, the integrity of, our electoral umpire. How will this conducting the election in one day, help to build the trust, voter trust in the electoral umpire?
Yeah, well, the discussion is one and same. Like first and foremost, seeing the election as something sacred, as something holy, as something that must be observed in accordance with the law. That's right. A body is situated with this responsibility, INEC. Please don't get me wrong, and I say with all sense of modesty and patriotic disposition, it's difficult for INEC to deliver such an election the way it is constituted currently. As an insider, so to speak, the challenges that INEC face, they may not say that no matter all the money you throw about, in fact, the more money, even the more the essence is. Because a lot of people, their focus is on money, how to make money out of elections, forgetting the essence of election itself. Is it on the day of election? So, INEC, unbundling INEC, as I was saying, creating electoral offenses tribunal or commission that will come hard on electoral offenders. There must be a deterrent to this on issues of election. That is it. Then election logistics, election management logistics on the day of election, that you move materials from one place to another, covering the whole 774 local government areas at the same time. It's an enormous, big responsibility. INEC department handling that, how equipped, how many are there? And then the inherent dishonesty and lack of patriotism among the players, including the key actors, including the stakeholders, the political parties. The political parties, unfortunately, don't want to obey their own party rules. They compound issues for INEC. So, you know, I also suggest another body, so to speak, that will regulate registration of political parties and regulation in their party primaries. Now, Anambra State, Guba, November 2024, Guba.
Now, all these departments you're talking about, all these creation of, like you said, unbundling INEC and having different, will I say, institutions that are taking care of all these responsibilities. Will it not add to the cost? Because you're talking about reduction of cost now.
Even as the same money appropriated under that subheading, separated, and then dealt with strictly on that. Because look, INEC will plan everything. By 12 midnight, they will go to bed. Everything is in place. By tomorrow morning, the cab, the vehicle that's supposed to move the vehicles is nowhere to be found. Or the driver is nowhere to be found. And everybody is in their house. It's on the day of election that these things rubs up negatively on our faces as election observers. And it's not, INEC did not fail in planning, but the other party failed. At the same time, it can be achieved when all these things are not in the hand of one man, one organization. INEC also is vested with so much political interest. They can do anything, not only their stakeholders, including the political parties, aspirant, contestant candidates. They subvert the system. They don't care what they do as long as they win the election. That is why election offenders tribunal is very important to come hard, heavily on them. It can be life sentence, because they just make mess of the whole thing, and then you can now see the conduct and behavior of the Nigerian politician. Today, rate the conduct and behavior, the utterances, the ethics, not to go to court, this one is right, the ethical standard of behavior expected of public officers holding secret offices. These are the things, because of the impunity within their political parties, they jettison the laws, they just do things. And it's not good for our society, no matter who benefits today. It's not good for Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Chris. So now back to Tanimu. You're talking about political parties. You just mentioned, conducting all the elections how will it affect the strategies of the political party and, of course, their campaign structures?
It's very simple. It means they should start early. They should put in the right thing. They should, as my co-analyst rightly pointed out, parties should be able to comply with their internal rules and regulation, and that is what they've flaunted over time. So if you know that there is consequences where you don't have time to substitute candidates illegally, if you are not prepared, you will not even be on the ballot in the first instance. So it creates a more harmonious relationship whereby people will plan ahead. People will be able to comply to rules and regulations. You have your constitution. You've submitted your constitution to INEC. INEC is supposed to equally participate as observers in your internal democratic structures. But over time, we've seen how parties are factionalized, how candidates are substituted, because they have enough time. Before now, people were not, did not believe that bank will have a single calendar end of the year for all banks, and we know what used to happen when it was different. Or Bank A will go to Bank B, take their funds, and declare profit. So these two will help to sanitize the whole system. Political parties will complement the role of the act or the portion of the constitution.
I want you to add a voice to this issue of unbundling INEC. You mentioned what do you say to that?
If you look at most of the people that perpetuated election offenses, most of those offenses are not properly being investigated by the police. The police are overburdened. Some of them, they lack the technical know-how. But if you have a special commission, you have a special tribunal, in one aspect, the elections are being investigated, the conduct of the election are being investigated, documentary evidences are obtained and prepared, and we have lawyers, private practitioners can be engaged. You obtain a fiat, they make an arrangement, you will create more employment opportunity. Offenders will, the necessary deterrent will be sent. Then you now have management, registration and management of political parties, as we have it today, is quite a Herculean task for INEC to actually regulate. But we have an independent body that is not answerable to INEC. This time around, it's answerable to Nigerians because it's made so independent in the real contest. So you now have effective and very functional political party. As we have it now, we don't have so many functional political parties. So we now want to kind of increase participation of Nigeria. We want to now deepen democracy, and the best way of doing it is to have a robust political parties striving not only to get into power, but to equally check those in power. It's way to create the necessary awareness. Now we don't. A lot of opposition is just in the hands of activists, and but these are functions where we are supposed to have shadow government, people that are ready to stepping into the shoes, people setting example for the government in power. We don't have that at the moment, so we need to do more.
Yes.
Now, Chris, we're talking about this bill. Of course, both of you have said it's a welcome development.
Yes.
It is doable.
Of
course, Tanimu also said it is a welcome development. Now, what is the role of the civil society and others, the public or the stakeholders, to ensure, should this bill be passed into law, to ensure its workability?
Well, you know, I'm here on the platform of the FLAG Foundation of Nigeria. As a civil society, non-governmental organization. Part of our interest, you know, people thought it was about the national flag, you know, it's about patriotism. It's about social mobilization. And enlightening the Nigerian people on the importance of them understanding their duties and responsibilities for citizenship, among which is this active participation in the political process at all levels. Citizens are aloof. The average Nigerian citizen don't understand his place in the scheme of things in Nigeria. That is where there's no voluntarism. People volunteer to educate the other. The more, not until Nigerians becomes, you know, aware of their rights, their privileges, their duties, their obligations, their responsibilities as citizens, the set will not get better.
Thank you very much.
Ask questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes. I have to end it here. This is where we draw the curtain on Nigeria today, on this episode of Nigeria Today. Very big thank you to Ahmed Abubakar Tanimu, a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And also the Director General of the FLAG Foundation, Chris Agere. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution. And thank you for being part of the program. Remember, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also check out this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24. I am Ikaria Clinton. Goodbye.